When the airline agent looked up at me and said, "Mrs. Barrett, your ticket was cancelled at 3:47 this morning," I honestly thought she had confused me with somebody else. I was standing at gate C-19 with my handbag on one shoulder, my passport in my hand, and the little blue neck pillow my granddaughter insisted I bring tucked under my arm. My son, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren were already through security. They had kissed my cheek, told me they were going to grab coffee, and left me at the check-in kiosk with our luggage tags. 10 minutes later, I was no longer a woman about to board a family vacation. I was a woman being left behind on purpose. My name is Nessa Barrett, and this is a story about the day my own family cancelled my ticket, flew to Florida without me, and learned, far too late, that I had already stopped being the foolish woman they thought I was. Let me take you back to where this all started. I was 64 that spring, a widow for just over 5 years, and living in the same brick house in Maple Glen where I had raised my son Ryan. It was a tidy house with white shutters, rose bushes along the front walk, and a kitchen window that looked over the maple tree my husband planted the year Ryan was born. I had taught elementary school for 32 years, most of them in the school library, and after Harold passed, I settled into a quieter life. I wasn't lonely exactly, but I had learned the difference between a full house and a full heart. Ryan was 38 then. He worked in commercial flooring sales, or at least he had before the layoffs started rolling through his company. His wife Claire sold handmade home decor online and had a way of speaking that sounded sweet until you realized every sentence had a hook hidden in it. Their children, Emma and Caleb, were the kind of children who still hugged me with their whole bodies. Emma was 14 and thoughtful. Caleb was 9 and forever leaving socks in strange places. 3 years earlier, when Ryan and Claire said they needed a temporary landing place, I had opened my home without hesitation. Just 6 months, Mom, Ryan had told me, standing in my living room with worry all over his face. Until we get caught up. Family helps family, I said, and I meant it. I gave them my downstairs guest suite. Then, when Claire said the children needed more space, I moved my sewing things out of the den so Caleb could use it for homework. I covered the grocery shortfalls when Ryan's hours were cut. I paid Emma's piano lesson, fees the month Claire forgot. When the old car needed repairs, I wrote the check before Ryan even finished asking. That was who I was. Not because I was weak, because I loved them. In those first months, we had dinners together most nights. I made pot roast on Sundays. Caleb told me knock jokes I had heard 100 times and laughed as though he had invented comedy itself. Emma sat at the counter doing algebra while I sliced apples and peanut butter for her snack. Ryan used to come into the kitchen after everybody had gone upstairs, lean against the doorway the way he did as a teenager, and say, "I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom." It would fill me up for days. Looking back, I should have noticed how often Claire talked about my house as though it were already a shared asset. She would stand in the dining room, looking around with that appraising little tilt of her head, and say things like, if we ever redid this space, we'd open that wall and put in a giant island. Or, this neighborhood is really increasing in value. Ryan says your lot alone is worth a fortune. At the time, I took it as conversation. Claire always had opinions about furniture, paint colors, resale value, and optimizing space. She spoke about homes the way some women speak about recipes, with confidence and possession. I should also have paid attention the first time she asked where I kept my important papers. We were having tea. It was raining. She had one of my blue ceramic teacups in her hand, and she said, almost casually, "Nessa, if anything ever happened and the kids needed to handle things fast, where do you keep the deed and insurance documents?" I laughed lightly. "Nowhere you need to worry about." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm only thinking ahead. At the time, I let it pass. Then there were smaller things, mail that disappeared from the entry table and reappeared opened. Questions about my life insurance that came dressed up as concern. Ryan mentioning more than once how complicated probate can be. Claire suggesting I should simplify my finances by putting Ryan's name on more accounts just for emergencies. I didn't do it. Something in me tightened every time she asked. Maybe that was the part of me that still belonged to Harold. My husband had been a gentleman, but he knew people. In the last year of his life, after his diagnosis, he had taken my hand one evening and said, "Be generous, Nessa, but never hand over your roof. Kindness doesn't require surrender." I heard those words in my head more and more that year. By late April, Claire began talking about a family vacation. At some point, she said one Tuesday morning, while unloading groceries I had paid for, "We need a real reset. The kids are stressed. Ryan is stressed. You've been carrying so much. We should all go somewhere together." Ryan picked it up immediately. "Actually, that's not a bad idea." Emma looked up from her phone. "Could we fly?" Claire laughed. "If Grandma wants to be spoiled, maybe we all fly." I told them not to fuss, but inside I was touched. 2 weeks later, Claire came to me with a travel website pulled up on her tablet and a brightness in her voice that now, in hindsight, I know was performance. "There's a resort near Sarasota," she said. "Beach access, 2-bedroom villa, breakfast included. 4 nights. It'll be your birthday trip, Nessa." "My birthday isn't for another month." "Exactly." She said, "We're celebrating early, before summer prices go up." Ryan added, "Mom, you've done so much for us. Let us do this." That was the moment I should have laughed and said no. Instead, I said, "I can contribute, but I'm not letting you spend money you don't have." Ryan looked relieved too quickly. Claire gave him a glance I didn't understand then, but I understand now. We split the cost, or rather, that was what I believed. I paid for the flights on my travel card because Claire said she could get a better hotel bundle if she did the booking from her account. She sat at my kitchen table with her tablet, tapping away, telling me about seat choices and baggage fees, and how annoying airline websites had become. "Send the confirmations to me too," I said. "Oh, I will," she replied. She sent me a screenshot of an itinerary the next day. Not the full email, just a screenshot. At the time, I didn't push. I trusted my family. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was ignoring the expression on Emma's face the night before we were supposed to leave. I was in the laundry room folding tiche. That's when she came in holding the cardigan I always wore on airplanes. She lingered in the doorway. "You excited, Grandma?" she asked. "I am." I said, "Are you?" She nodded, but it was the kind of nod children give when their mouth says yes and their eyes say something else entirely. Then she asked, "Do you have all your things?" "I believe so." "Your ID, your card, your phone charger?" I smiled. "Yes, ma'am." She pressed the cardigan into my hands and said very softly, "Good." I remember watching her walk away and feeling a strange ripple of unease I could not have explained. It passed, or rather, I made myself let it pass. At 4:30 the next morning, I was awake before my alarm. I made coffee in my little white percolator and stood at the kitchen counter in the dark, sipping from my mug while the house slept around me. The sky outside was still navy blue, the refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, Caleb coughed in his sleep. I felt almost girlish with anticipation. Imagine that, at my age, being excited over a little family trip to Florida. By 5:10, the house was moving. Suitcases rolled across hardwood floors. Claire was fussing over sunscreen and boarding passes. Ryan was searching for his earbuds. Emma was quiet. Caleb was loud. It all felt ordinary in that messy, family, travel sort of way. We pulled out of the driveway at 5:42 a.m. The drive to the airport took just under 40 minutes. Claire sat in the front passenger seat, turning around every few minutes to ask if everybody had their devices. Ryan drove. I sat in the back beside Caleb. Emma had her forehead against the window. Halfway there, Claire said, "You know, Nessa, this is really good for all of us. We needed to reclaim some joy." It sounded kind. It sounded almost grateful. Now I know it was rehearsal. At 6:31, we pulled into departures. Ryan unloaded the suitcases. Claire handed me my passport and said, "I'm going to get the kids through the line before it gets crazy. You and Ryan handle the luggage tags." Then Ryan's phone rang. He frowned at the screen. "Work, I need to grab this." He touched my elbow. "I'll be right back, Mom." And just like that, I was standing alone at the self-check kiosk. I wasn't worried yet. Not then. Families split up for a few minutes at airports all the time. I scanned my passport. The machine blinked, then it blinked again, then a message came up in red. "Reservation not found." I tried again, slower this time. Same result. The young airline agent with a silver nose ring stepped over and said, "Need help?" I gave her my passport with a little embarrassed laugh. Apparently the machine doesn't know me. She typed, her fingers paused, then she looked up. "Mrs. Barrett, your ticket was cancelled at 3:47 this morning." I stared at her. "I'm sorry. It was cancelled through the online portal associated with the reservation. The other 4 passengers are still active." I heard the terminal noise around me suddenly as if it had been turned up, rolling luggage, boarding announcements, a baby crying somewhere behind me, the hiss of espresso from a nearby cafe. My hands went cold. There has to be some mistake. I said, "We're traveling together. My son and his family are on this reservation." She nodded in that careful way workers do, when they already know you are not going to like the next sentence. "They've already cleared security." Something inside me dropped so hard I felt it in my knees. I called Ryan first. Straight to voicemail, I called Claire. She answered on the 3rd ring. There was an airport announcement blaring on her side, and I could hear Caleb in the background asking for a muffin. "Claire," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "the airline says my ticket was cancelled." A pause. Not surprise, not confusion, a pause. Then Claire sighed and said very quietly, "Nessa, please don't do this here." My mouth went dry. "Do what? Make a scene?" I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "My ticket was cancelled." "Yes," she said. "We made a decision this morning." "We?" I leaned against the counter because I thought I might actually fall. "What decision?" "That this trip would be better with just our immediate family." For a moment, I couldn't speak at all. Then I heard my own voice come out thin and disbelieving. "I am your family." On the other end, I could hear rolling wheels, the murmur of voices, Ryan saying something too far from the phone to make out. Claire lowered her voice. "Nessa, you've been under a lot of stress, and honestly, sometimes your moods affect everybody. The kids need ease this week. Ryan needs ease. We'll explain when we get back." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "I paid for those flights. We'll work it out. Claire." Then Ryan's voice came on the line. "Mom, just go home, okay? We're about to board. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." That sentence did something to me. Not because it was loud. Ryan wasn't loud. He sounded tired, irritated, ashamed. But the cruelty of it was so casual, so practiced, as if I were the inconvenience, as if I were a neighbor they had over-invited. I said, "Ryan, did you agree to this?" Silence. "Then we'll talk when we get back." And he hung up. I stood there with the phone still in my hand, the line dead in my ear, while people moved around me in vacation clothes and business shoes, and families with strollers and couples holding iced coffee. The airline agent asked if I wanted to rebook at the current fare. I remember staring at her and thinking how strange it was that the world could go on like nothing had happened when your heart had just been cracked straight down the middle. I managed to say, "No, thank you." I picked up my suitcase myself. It felt heavier than it had 40 minutes earlier. As I turned away from the counter, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claire. "Please don't upset the children by calling repeatedly. We all need a peaceful week." A second text came right after. "There should be a credit for your cancelled seat." There should be a credit, as if she had cancelled a lamp order, as if I were an item to be returned. I made it to a row of molded plastic seats near the window before I sat down. My legs were trembling. Out on the tarmac, a plane was backing away from the gate. For one wild second, I imagined Ryan on it, buckling his seat belt, letting the woman he married tell him that leaving his mother behind was healthy, reasonable, justified. I thought about Emma's face in the laundry room. I thought about the way Claire had insisted on handling all the bookings. I thought about the missing confirmation email, and for the first time, I understood something terrible. This hadn't been impulsive. This had been planned. I took one shaky breath, then another, and beneath the hurt, beneath the humiliation and disbelief, something older and steadier began to rise. Because what Ryan and Claire did not know, what neither of them understood as their plane taxied toward the runway, was that I had already begun to question them weeks earlier. And 3 days before that flight, I had quietly taken steps they were going to regret. But at that moment, sitting alone in Terminal C with my ticket gone and my family in the air, I still had no idea how much worse the truth was about to become. I drove home just after 7:30 with the radio off and the taste of bad airport coffee still sour in my mouth. Every red light felt personal, every minute stretched. There is a particular kind of silence that comes after betrayal. It isn't peace. It isn't calm. It's the sound of your mind trying to catch up to something your heart already knows. By the time I turned onto Maple Glen Drive, my hands had stopped shaking. I was too stunned for that. But I felt hollow, as though somebody had scooped the center out of me and left the shell upright. Then I saw the white sedan parked 2 houses down. It belonged to my neighbor Gloria Jenkins. Gloria was 70 if she was a day, wore bright lipstick before noon, and believed every crisis could be improved by either prayer or pound cake. As I pulled into my driveway, she stepped off her porch and started toward me, one hand lifted. "Nessa," she called. I thought y'all were gone. I got out of the car slowly. So did I. Her expression changed immediately. What happened? I looked at my house. The curtains in the front room were half open. The hydrangeas by the porch drooped in the early heat. Everything looked normal, too normal. My ticket was cancelled. I said. Gloria stopped in the walkway. Cancelled? By Claire or Ryan, one of them. They flew without me. She pressed a hand to her chest. No, I'm afraid yes. For a long moment she just looked at me, and I loved her for not filling the silence with nonsense. Then she said, more carefully, "Nessa, I need to tell you something." The bottom fell out of me all over again. What? At about 6:15 this morning, before you all left, a man in a navy polo came by. He pulled halfway into your drive, then backed out. I was watering my ferns, so I asked if he needed something. She frowned. He said he was with Ridgeway Realty and was just confirming that the house would be available for a walk through later this week. I don't think I breathed for a full second. A walk through? I repeated. That's what he said. I told him you were headed out of town. He said perfect. Then the photographer won't be in anyone's way. The air felt thin. What photographer? Gloria stepped closer. Nessa, are you selling? I turned and looked at my own front door as if it belonged to somebody else. No, I said, I am not. That was the moment the humiliation at the airport began to transform into something far sharper. I thanked Gloria, though I can't remember my exact words. I only remember the way my key shook in the lock. When I stepped inside, the house smelled faintly of Claire's vanilla room spray and the banana bread I had baked the night before for the children to snack on in the car. On the entry table sat a bowl of keys, Ryan's unopened auto insurance notice, and a brochure I had never seen before. It was for Silver Pines Senior Living. I picked it up with fingers that no longer felt entirely attached to me. On the cover was a photograph of smiling gray-haired people standing around a puzzle table under the words, "Comfort, simplicity, peace of mind." Inside were floor plans for one-bedroom assisted living apartments. I stood in my own foyer, staring at that brochure, and felt something inside me harden. Not because there is shame in needing assistance, there isn't, but because nobody had asked me, nobody had spoken to me. Nobody had treated me as a person with a mind and will and dignity. Instead, they had left a brochure in my house, like a rehearsal for my erasure. That morning I walked through every room. In the den, Caleb's sneakers were tipped under the chair. In the downstairs suite, Claire's curling iron was still plugged in. On the kitchen counter, beside the fruit bowl, I saw the yellow legal pad where Claire often made lists. Most of the top page had been torn away, but pressed hard enough to leave impressions in the page beneath. I fetched a pencil from the junk drawer and shaded lightly over the paper, the way librarians and schoolchildren do with hidden messages. Words emerged: Thursday 11, 00 Ridgeway Photographer, Friday 2, 00 Staging Consult Measure Dining Room / Primary Suite Check with Ryan Remom Docs. My stomach clenched so hard it hurt. What happened next shocked even me, because I realized this was no longer about a cruel vacation slight. This was about preparation, arrangement, strategy, and if Claire had made a plan, then somewhere in this house there would be more. I went upstairs to the room Ryan and Claire used. I did not rummage through drawers like a thief. I stood in the doorway first and prayed for steadiness. Then I opened the desk Claire used for her online business. In the top drawer was ribbon, packing tape, and thank you cards. In the second drawer was a manila folder. On the tab, in Claire's neat looping handwriting, were 3 words: Florida /house/. Next I sat down in her chair because my legs had gone weak again. Inside the folder were printed copies of the Sarasota booking confirmation, my credit card summary showing the airfare charge, and a Ridgeway Realty preliminary seller packet. There was also a document titled Projected Net Proceeds, estimating what the property could bring if sold in late summer after minor cosmetic updates. My property. Clipped to the back was a single page of notes written partly in Ryan's blocky handwriting. If Mom pushes back, remind her upkeep, too much say kids need stability, condo closer to church. Need her signature before school starts. I read those lines 3 times. Then I laid the papers flat on the desk, took out my phone and photographed every page. If you've never had your heart broken by your own child, let me tell you something plain. The pain is not dramatic. It is not a thunderclap. It is quieter than that. It is the slow, sick recognition that someone you carried in your body can learn to speak to you like you are an obstacle. I sat there in Claire's chair and whispered, "How could you?" No one answered, of course. At 8:14 a.m. my phone rang. Ryan, I almost didn't answer. Then I did. He sounded irritated before I even spoke. "Mom, why did Gloria text Claire asking if we're selling your house?" I closed my eyes. "So you are discussing my house with the neighbors now?" She was watering her porch plants when your realtor came by. There was a beat of silence. Then Ryan said, too quickly, "That's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Claire's voice floated in behind him. "Put me on speaker." He did. Claire came on bright and sharp. "Nessa, this is exactly why we didn't want any upset before the trip. We were trying to bring you options in a gentle way. Options." I repeated, "By cancelling my ticket and arranging a walkthrough of my home while I was gone." "Nobody arranged anything final," she said. "We were exploring with my house for your benefit," she replied. "You keep saying you're tired and this place is too much for one person." "I am not one person," I said, my voice suddenly firm. "I live in my home with my son and his family." Claire let out a small, humorless laugh. "Exactly. That single word told me everything." Ryan jumped in. "Mom, calm down." I said, "Do not tell me to calm down in my own house." He exhaled hard. "We're just saying maybe it's time to think practically." "No," I replied. "You are telling me what you planned behind my back." Claire said, colder now, "We were trying to help you make a transition with dignity." I stood up so fast the chair skidded behind me. "With dignity," I said. "You cancelled my ticket like I was excess baggage." Neither of them spoke. Then Claire said, "We will talk when we return. Please do not touch our room. Our room." In my house, I almost laughed then, but it would have sounded ugly. Instead I said quietly, "Enjoy your trip." And I ended the call. I stood still for several seconds afterward. Then I gathered every paper I had found, slid them back exactly as they were, and went downstairs. At 8:42 a.m., I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Elaine Mercer, the estate attorney I had met with 3 days earlier. The second was to my bank, because the truth was this: Claire and Ryan were not the first people to notice I was getting older. I had noticed too, and unlike them, I had prepared with care, not greed. By noon, I was going to understand just how necessary that preparation had been. Elaine Mercer's office was above a florist and across from the courthouse, in one of those old brick buildings with polished railings and stairs that creak no matter how careful your feet are. I arrived at 10:05 carrying my handbag, the Silver Pines brochure, and a folder I had thrown together from the photographs on my phone and the notes I had written in my car. Elaine met me at the door herself. She was in her early 50s, silver at the temples, direct without being cold, and one of the few people I'd met since Harold died who could look me in the face without trying to soften every hard truth into nonsense. "Nessa," she said, taking one look at me, "come in." 3 days earlier, I had sat in her conference room for what I believed was a routine estate update. Truthfully, it had been Emma, not Ryan, not Claire, but 14-year-old Emma, who nudged me there without meaning to. A week before the airport, I had come home from the grocery store and found Claire in the dining room with my old filing tin open and my late husband's trust documents spread across the table. She jumped when she saw me. "Oh, good," she said. "I was just trying to help organize." I remember setting the grocery bags down very carefully. "My papers do not need organizing," she smiled. "I only thought if something happened suddenly, Ryan would need clarity." I said nothing, but that night I barely slept. The next morning, I called Elaine, whose name Harold had tucked into the back of our insurance binder years before. We reviewed everything: my deed, my accounts, Harold's old will, my current beneficiaries. Elaine advised me to move a portion of my savings into a fresh account at a different bank, remove Ryan as an emergency contact on 2 documents he no longer needed access to, and create a clear occupancy agreement for anyone staying in my home. "Not because you're under attack," she had told me then, "because good records prevent bad behavior." So while Ryan and Claire believed they were guiding a confused older woman toward a convenient future, I had already created a paper trail that recognized me exactly as I was: competent, informed, and very much in charge. Now, sitting across from Elaine again, I showed her the photographs. She didn't gasp. She didn't pity me, she rayed. Then she looked up and said, "We're going to handle this methodically." I nearly cried from relief at that word. Methodically, not emotionally, not vindictively, not desperately, methodically.